Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. This is the Conversation Room. My name is Ellen Wagner. My pronouns are she, her. I am the CEO and founder of Cross Cultural Bridges, and with this format, we bring you topics that you normally probably do not hear often enough. So, we want to highlight voices that are underrepresented, topics that are underrepresented. And with this format, we're going to change that. And I'm so glad that you tune in. So, when you are listening to this conversation live, this is not a one way street. You can use the comments. So, we have people watching us from YouTube, we have people watching us on LinkedIn. So, please use the comment section. You can let us know from where you're tuning in. You can leave your feedback, and we will see your comments. And if you have any kind of questions, please just chime in. And now you're wondering, okay, what is today's topic? Maybe you registered on purpose and put this date in your calendar. Well, it's going to be an exciting topic because the conversation room today is all about love migrants. And we want to explore the intersection of gender, migration, and grassroots activism. And if you're wondering, what do all these terms mean? I guess we will clarify this within this next hour. And I'm so lucky that I'm not here alone, but I have a special guest for you. Saumya will introduce herself in just a second. And I just want you to know some housekeeping rules here for our room. So I would like to ask you to be mindful using language when you post any kind of questions or give us feedback. This is a room where we want to learn. This is a room of growth. So it might be uncomfortable at one time or another, especially if you are on a learning journey, just like I am. And this is a lifelong process. So it might be that we say something wrong. It might be that I'm calling out you or that you're calling out me. And that is perfectly fine, right? So this is an opportunity for us to learn about new perspectives, to learn about the life realities of people who might be different from us, and maybe also the beauty of finding similarities from people you would never expect to find similarities with. All right, enough from me. And I want to give some space for you, Samya. Would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe also from where you're tuning in. I'm tuning in from Princeton, New Jersey, which is at the US American East Coast. And yeah, let the audience know a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for that warm welcome. My name is Saumya, and I use the pronoun she, her. I'm tuning in from a small North German city called Oldenburg, and I am here after a long journey behind me of different continents and different countries and different experiences. I am a mother. I am an academic. I am a migrant woman of color, and I am here with you today to have a lovely conversation. And I'm so glad that you invited me to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samya. And I heard you just said that you're a mother, that there are special folks out there listening and watching right now. Would you like to say hello to them?
Yes, if my sons have managed tune in after their shower and bedtime rituals, then yes, I want to say a big hello to Yuba and Neil, who have this special special permission today to be stay awake longer than usual to watch me on screen live.
That's awesome. Because in Germany right now it is 8 p.m. in the evening, right? For
Yeah.
me, it is 6 hours before. It is 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So I just had my lunch break. And yeah, and maybe I'm going to start with telling the audience how this conversation came about, right? And I think the last time we were talking, I was like, when did we meet us again? So there's a special place called To Belonging Space, which is a 1 year program. Unfortunately, it's not running anymore. which was an empowerment space, right, for people with different backgrounds around feminist topics. And one day we were in a breakout session, or a couple of times actually, we were in a breakout session, and it's like, ah, hi, you again. And I think the thing that connected us right away was that we are parents, right? And I also have children, three children, preteen and twins, and a baby or toddler age. And that is a special experience. And I also, you introduced yourself as being a migrant. And I am also a migrant. I live in the United States now for a couple of years. And it's funny that I wouldn't even consider myself a migrant. And there you see how Eurocentric, because I was born and raised in Germany, how Eurocentric the way is that I got socialized. Because when I, as a European, move abroad, I might be the expatriate, or there are other fancy terms that show my privilege, right? Because I don't face, let's say, the same discrimination like, and now I'm very generalizing, people of color moving to Germany, because Germany is still a country where people might assume to be German, the only way is to be white. And by white, I don't mean the skin color per se, but it's a social construct, meaning that white are the people being inferior, enjoying more privileges, and people of color are the people experiencing racism. And that could be due to your background, your ethnicity, your language, your dialect, your foreign sounding name, and all different kind of things. Now I'm delving right into the topic. Today we want to talk about what a love migrant is, and maybe from your perspective, how do you describe what a love migrant is? And
Yeah.
just one comment here from Nadia, real quick, that I saw. It is interesting how we use expert versus migrant. Yes, so much. Although it could be that people are staying in the country for the same time, but it sounds so much as like privilege here. But go ahead, Samya.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. It is definitely a social construct. And perhaps the term love migrant itself is also a social construct, but it is aimed more towards empowering the person who is in that construct. So, to begin with, I want to give a loud disclaimer that the word love migrant is not my own term. I have not developed it. The credit goes to Yvonne Riano, a researcher from Switzerland. And in 2003, she termed this term in her paper, which I think will be posted in the chat as well, where Riano felt exactly, I think, in her research, the need for, firstly, speaking of migration, especially family migration, is female dominated. And then usually it's not only, as you refer to, like, person of color migrating, but it's also considered a lot of times also within migration discourse that it's women in family migration, women from the global south coming to the global north and coming as a survival strategy. So in order to better their quality of life, for themselves and for their families. So Riano claimed that that is not the case. And under these family migrants, they are also skilled and women who want something from their career or etc. They come with qualifications. And therefore, she said, of course, it requires a kind of differentiated knowledge generation. And there, under the family migrants as a whole construct, she made two terms under it, which is economic family migrant and love migrant. And in there, she defines, yes, there is an economic factor where migrants who migrate for the economic reason want to better their life, but usually there is, for example, marriage agency involved, or there is some kind of that kind of interaction. Plus, there are low qualified or not qualified people amongst this group. And then there is the other, which she defines as love migrants, where their motivation for migration is largely because they want to spend their life with the person who they've met, and the reason is love, but also with a mix of gender and economic. So that was the definition, and these people or these women contain higher level or medium level education as well as qualifications. And then there was this and then I read this and I found myself there quite a lot, not only with my experiences, but I was also looking for answers to my situation because I didn't feel that I fit in. I had similar struggles to a lot of people, but I didn't really find my place. And when I read this paper, it was already in the process of I want to do something with women migrants, women like myself. So I went out, I had finished my master's, and after that, I was on maternity leave. My firstborn was just born, he was 6 months old. Probably I was bored. I went ahead researching and frantically looking for topics that I could fill a gap with. And there I was sitting with this topic because I was engaged. In an NGO, and I'm still very actively engaged there, which is Verband wie National Familien- und Partnerschaften, so an organization for families that are binational and living in Germany. And I was quite active there socially and doing events and attending workshops and seminars and all that. And I found so many women like myself who migrated perhaps for 20 years or 2 months or 3 years, talking about the same thing. And I said, but where is the material about them? Where is their representation? And that's where I came across Riano's work. And I said, that's exactly what I want to investigate further in the context of Germany, but also in a very micro context. And that's where I basically, through my PhD, so to say, in a micro narrative form, increase the definition of a love migrant by including also, on top of how Riano had defined them, to also include family and negotiations that women like myself have to make in order to make it work post migration, and the decisions that we have to take pre migration. For example, the classic one: should I go or should I not? And if I do this, what is going to happen? Those kind of conversations that I was having on a very regular basis with other, so to say, love migrants, basically converted themselves into a PhD. And I wouldn't have done it any other way. I think along the way, I met so many wonderful women who gave me so much support, love, but also so much to say. And I think used to keep telling my supervisor that I have to finish this. It took me 30, no, not 13, 10 years to finish it. I had two kids in between and changing continents. But at the same time, towards the end, where it was almost like, okay, I just can't do it anymore, I kept telling myself, the reason I'm doing it because I want to give them a voice. And that was exactly how it was in the interviews. It's like a conversation that you and I are having, where they actually said to me, it's so good that someone actually is listening, that someone actually is hearing my story, because till now I thought I'm all alone. And I think this is why I did it. I did the PhD, and I'm so glad that I have platforms like yours to share it, because this is exactly my goal, to share these stories and to share things, as you said in the beginning, that we usually do not hear in everyday lives. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
detoured there quite a lot.
That's okay. And I'm trying to just share with everyone who's tuning in the source that you were talking about, Riano, Love Migrant, and also we shared the link. And if that is going too quickly for you right now, just know that you can send us direct message to Samya or me directly, and we will, um, yeah, share the resources again because that is a very long URL. But just connect with us, send us a message, and then we will come back to you. Samya, you were saying you collected stories, right? You heard stories and you want to make them visible. Would you like to share a little bit more about your own personal story and how you felt during that time? I mean, it's such a huge relief to find the words for what is happening to you. But I guess that wasn't the case from the very beginning, right?
No,
Just
not.
alone the question, shall I go or should I not go? And the second question you were asking, and what is happening when I go? I think this is a question, just like becoming a parent, you don't have a clue. You might read about it. Friends may maybe tell you, like, go to a restaurant with your partner one more time because you won't have enough time to, but it's just too hard to grapple. So maybe you can just let us share a little bit from your own experience as a love migrant.
Yes,
And yeah, I'm very curious.
thank you. Thank you for listening to my story as well. Um, well, as I said, like I've thrown in the words of jumping continents and changing countries. So I'm born and brought up in India. I spent 26 years of my life there. And at 26, I went to New Zealand for a master's degree. So I've got a bachelor's degree from India. And then for master's, I went to New Zealand. And that's where I met my now husband, that time love interest. And that's how it happened. And so this story is very parallel shared by a lot of other love migrants who were part of my study as well. That study seems to be a big factor, or exchange, some work trips and etc. So in fact, Riano also points that out, that it happens during you meet someone. And so the master's
And just
program.
one question, was he also located in New Zealand or was he also with visiting?
He was a student as well. He had come for 1 year master graduate program, not a
Yeah.
master's.
And I think
Yeah,
this is really a key element in all of this. So every time I was traveling and I was traveling alone, for instance, or if I lived abroad, I lived in 6 different countries now, that you find the people who are not from there. Because
yeah,
sometimes it's a little hard to connect with the locals. It takes a little while. You need to get accustomed to the culture, to the habits. And even though I'm capable and aware of talking the language English
yeah,
here,
yeah.
it doesn't mean that I cannot communicate with the people. I did a lot of mistakes because the
Mhm.
German communication is so different from the US American one. So it takes a while. And the easiest way to click is with other people, maybe from your same country, but especially from different countries, because people are, let's say, a little bit more open
Yeah,
minded towards, I want to get to know new things. They're a little bit more, how can you say that? Used to being a little bit uncomfortable, stepping out of their comfort zone. Otherwise, you would not do this huge move to study in a different country, right? So I think this is like a really key element in all of this.
yes, it definitely is. And I think it's not it's this curiosity, but also the comfort that you find, when you're both doing the same mistakes, and you are both not sure if this is, culturally coded well or not. And though I would say Germany and India very, very north and south pole in terms of cultural understandings. And I think that was part of our relationship as well in the start, where we had a lot of mistakes and misunderstandings. But I think what you said is true, because the accommodation where we met was for international graduate students. So it really, brought us together. Like, it really boiled it down for us. So yeah, and that's where we met. And this is something I also refer in my PhD, is about restrictions. So there's not only the social restrictions that you have, which are in your decision making involved. So, for example, Do I move with him back to Germany, or do I not? And then there is the institutional restrictions, which for some of us are harder, as you talked about your privilege being, an expat, whereas I held an Indian passport when I was in New Zealand. And um, on an Indian passport, I could just not just go to Germany just because I met a German and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. That was not institutionally possible. So there
Mhm.
was this limitation. And I think this is another limitation that I talk about, because the women I interviewed are non-Europeans, and most of them are from the global south. So some of them have experienced this, some have not. For example, Germany has a clear, since 2006, a language certificate regulation, which is basically, if you are a spouse and you want to move to a German national, you have to prove that you have the language skills. And that was, I moved in 2008. So yeah, that was one restriction that I had to fulfill. Otherwise, we would have to live in separation. And that
Yeah.
also happens for many love migrants, particularly coming from nations that are not part of some kind of collaboration with Germany. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah.
May I ask one question? You were talking about the global south, and it could be that there are people out there who never heard about the term global north, global south, but I think it's a important distinction. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, of course, there's a geographical global north and global south, but there is also Ellen, you might want to help me as well to explain it better. So there is also this construct of global south in terms of, so what we used to call developing countries or third world countries. So India is part of that, or the Indian subcontinent. Though Australia, for example, belongs to the global, physical global south, is not part of that, because they have Western values, better economy, better whatever, that matches more, for example, to German standards, and of course, colonization is part of the global north and global south divide as well. So that's what it means. Ellen, did I do a good job?
Very good job. Yeah, and I would say that with being or living in the global north, many people are not aware that they are. They are comes a lot of privileges, like passport privileges. How can you move around in the world, and how your language, for example, is accepted. If you're, and you were talking about being a binational couple, certain languages are perceived as, oh, wow, you speak two languages, in comparison to people who come from the global south. They speak German, maybe English, and then their mother tongue. People are saying, are having not this admiration for being multilingual, right? And so
Right.
forth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these are like the prestige languages.
Mhm.
So also the another aspect of my positioning as a mother again is very difficult, because I speak Hindi, and I tried very hard in living in the global north, and especially in a very monolingual dominant culture in Germany, to actually provide my kids the opportunity to speak fluently my mother tongue, because I had to decide which language is going to be more profitable for them. And so at the end, I have chosen to speak consequently only English with them, because with Hindi, first of all, I don't have any networks or a wide range of networks where everyone speaks Hindi. That's another thing which is funny. When in Germany, we're like, why is it so difficult? There's so many Indians out there. And it's like, yes, you know how many languages there are in India? More than 28 languages, and it can be that for chances for me to meet people who also have other kids, and are willing to communicate with me in Hindi is quite unlikely.
In a
um,
similar age, to find kids in a similar age, right? You cannot
exactly.
just get together. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was another thing, and that's why I also, that's part of my negotiation as well, post migration, for example, things that a lot of parents probably in Germany don't have to think of. Or how do my children communicate with their grandma? These were all the questions that I was engaged with when I became a mother. But as you asked in the original question, before I moved, what kind of thoughts that went through my mind? I think for me, the first experience of exclusion was actually the language test that was expected. And the funny bit was that when we went to the German embassy, uh, literally the first question, the person who was trying to help us was asking me if I was a Kiwi. So the Kiwi is basically if I was a New Zealand citizen. And I said no. And they said, which passport do you have? And I said, an Indian passport. And then he said, it's not possible for you to just, accompany your partner to Germany. So then we were like, okay, what do? We want to stay together. And so he basically, thank God for that German official, basically said, get married. And so that's what we did, even though we were very fresh in our relationship. But the institutional restrictions left us no choice but to make the decision to actually get married. And then with that came, of course, other restrictions, such as the language and exclusion of, for example, also persons who migrate from Australia and New Zealand do not have to necessarily give an English, not English, sorry, a German test as a proof because they are expected to be more integration friendly, if I may say in general terms, compared to someone from the global south. So, yeah, and I think these insecurities were part of that. And then, but I think I was pretty naive still when I
Saumya,
migrated.
my apologies. I really have to now get the phone because my daughter is calling me from school.
Oh,
So just 1 second. I'm going to mute
all right.
myself.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
All good.
happening. Yeah, and I'm wondering, she called me twice, and she's just changing plans for after school today. So now I'm in the known, and we can continue. My apologies for that, Samya.
If it wasn't 8 p.m. here, I'm pretty sure my son would be calling me as well. So that's happened before to me many times. And it's not only my son, my husband calls me also at random times when
Yes.
I'm middle of a meeting or middle of a workshop. That was the latest.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes I just don't pick up, but right now I don't know what's happening, and it could have been something worse. So yeah, family
Exactly.
first always for me. Yeah, but
Exactly.
please continue.
Um, yeah, and then I think at that time I was perhaps naive, perhaps, as you say in German, unerfahren or not experienced.
Mm.
Um, was also, I came to Germany thinking, yeah, I have a master's degree. I am speaking at least two languages. Yeah, all sorted, and I'll be all cool. I'll go there. I'll say, hey, this is me. I need a job, and you give me one. And ta-da! Uh,
Mm.
6 months later, no job. 7 months later, no job. And on top of that, I had to learn German. That was part of my visa again. That upon arrival, I had to commit that I complete a certificate in German language till B1, which is the European Standards of Language, which is basically a little above foundational knowledge skills of German language, which basically means you can go buy your bread from the bakery and you can order a coffee, but that doesn't mean you can find a job.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think these experiences really imprinted in my brain, and that's where I started my search for people like me. I also started because I think that's where the inequalities became clearer. Um, and so much that I wanted a job, which I did find on my own initiative. But I think this whole thing of feeling outside, feeling not belonging, always accompanied me, as you also mentioned earlier, in terms of language. It was never perfect enough. It was never good enough. I was obviously constantly asked where I come from because of my accent, because of how I used my German grammar, which I still don't do correctly, and I refuse to do it correctly. Because I want to live in a translingual space, because no language is perfect and languages are evolving.
Mhm.
Um, and I
Nicely
think,
said.
yes, because languages are cultures and cultures are always evolving. And why can't languages evolve? Why does it have to be perfect? And
Exactly.
and in Germany, we always have this word of the year, right? Like towards the end. And it's always a word that you've never heard before, or it's been used by young people in Germany. And if that's evolving, then why can't another person be comfortable with my skills?
Exactly. Yeah.
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 So
You talk,
that's where we were.
yeah, you talk about a lot of inequalities, right? And you said that you experienced exclusion on this way, even before coming to Germany. And I think the experiences of being excluded and not feeling like you belong is a road towards activism, right? And you were talking about grassroots activism in our conversation before today. And how did you, well, the question, how did you get there, is really not necessary because I can imagine. But what do you understand under the term of grassroots activism?
Um, I think for me, grassroots activism is literally how, if you Google that word and what shows up, is basically an individual or a group of individuals from ordinary lives can make a positive change.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I feel that I do. I still um, I find it difficult to still call myself an activist, but if you really break down the term like grassroots, and it's literally that I'm at the bottom of everything. So they, on the top you have say the politicians or whoever is like doing like major changes in society, and then there's me like who's sitting in her home office chair and um, writing emails to people like, hey, can we gather for this? And do you want to, have this weekend about talking about this or this workshop? And I think that's where I sit at. And I feel that because I've seen it with so let me go back again. With my experiences and with my feeling excluded, I reached out to an NGO. There, I found these people from whom I could draw a lot of positive energy, who could hold me, who could share with me, cry with me, laugh with me. And their German was not perfect. And this sort of got me to think like how important this is to keep this rolling and to keep these spaces for persons who can participate, like myself, for those who come after me. So I migrated in 2008, and ever since there has been constantly people migrating for family reasons. And if I can offer these persons just a space where they can share, care, love, laugh together, going out from that room for me till today is so empowering because I get recognized, I get taken for who I am, how I look, how I speak, how I laugh, how I talk, and that's it, with no judgments. And I think this itself is so empowering for someone who migrates with already an imbalance, where, for example, it can also be, for example, my degrees didn't get recognized. If I didn't have my German husband, who was pro with the German bureaucracy, to do a Widerspruch, which is basically to say, hey, I don't agree with your with your rejecting my application, I wouldn't have made it. So these are the kind of experiences I want to share with other women, particularly. And I also want to create this space of grassroots activism where one pays forward and then the other one pays forward, and we form a collective that supports each other, but is also supporting in a way that moves forward. So I believe also in my PhD, I've written a lot about Love Migrants' creative agency to succeed. And that's what needs to be recognized. So, for example, taking detours or creatively organizing their professional life. So, for example, I had a person who I interviewed. She was an architect, a fully qualified architect, but she could not just start in Germany. So what she did was that she came across close to her house a cafe that was opening, no, a cafe that was getting sold, or for rent or something like that. And she took over that cafe and she ran this small lunch cafe from there, that place. And next to her, a very old Bremen, old kind of house from the 1800s got renovated. And she just got talking to the architect who was renovating it. And then he said, in conversation, probably asked her what she was doing, etc. And then she said, oh, this is just, my stepstone to future success, but I'm actually an architect. And then she got hired by him. So these kind of creative ways of coping with inequalities, and this is what I want to also share, like pay it forward, also to share that yes, it is difficult and it's painful and it takes very, very long to uncommon to arrive itself. I also have a very good friend who was also part of the interviews I did, and she's when the day I interviewed her, it had been 20 years since she migrated. And she cried on that interview and said, I have finally arrived. I have finally accepted that I live in two countries, that I have a life here, but I also have a life in my home country. And I finally made peace with it. And I think this kind of process is what I want to make easier for those who come after me. And that's why I have organized in the past and currently as well. I have a small group of binational couples who I moderate every month, where we talk about difficult topics such as racism in everyday life, racism in relationships, bringing up children in Germany, but also fun topics like last time we danced with another participant who taught us salsa, and but we talk and empower each other together. Or we talk, for example, one person was having a lot of problems finding jobs, so we give contacts and we get them in touch with other people who we know. So that's for me grassroots activism.
So many things I would like to ask or touch on, but I'd like to stay on lane on the topics that we thought are really most interesting. And one thing that we might, or concept that we could talk about, is intersectionality. And I talked already about the different privileges that people have growing up in the global north, living in the global south, and moving. So privileges, for everyone who's listening and doesn't know what privileges are, I would say that it's the lack of barriers that you have. So it doesn't mean that your life isn't hard and that you're not working hard for everything that you achieve. But in order to get there, whether it is career-wise or finding a nice place to live or whatever it is, you have better access because you don't have to take these detours. It's more in reach for you. And you said that um, he needed to learn the language, right? So that is also a privilege. If people have the language skills, they have more access, but still it is not a guarantee. And you're an academic. Normally, I would say, oh, if you're an academic, you have a bachelor's and a master's degree, you are very privileged. But again, if the institutions don't allow you to work, then these privileges are also gone. If we talk about intersectionality and if you want, you can explain the term, or I can explain the term in the context of parenting and caregiving. What role does it play?
I think it'd be great if you just explain the term intersectionality, and then I can jump
Sure.
into yeah, the other
Mhm.
aspect.
Okay, so intersectionality is a term that was coined by the scholar Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in the United States. And she said that we stand at the intersection of different forms of oppression that we can experience. So in my case, because I'm a queer, Black, cisgender woman, I experiences sexism just as I'm standing at an intersection where traffic can come from one side, and I can experience racism and I can experience LGBTQIA hostility and sometimes everything at the same time. And depending on which intersection you're standing, the more or less privileges you have in life. Just in short, there have been people using the concept of intersectionality way before, like Sojourner Truth, but I don't want to go into deep. And now, Saumya, in the context of parenting and caregiving, what are your thoughts about intersectionality?
So, if you notice, like in the beginning already, I introduced myself as a mom, as a migrant, as an academic, as everything else. And I think this itself is not taken away when you become a parent. So, you have this particular identity that you carry with yourself. Um, and then when you become a parent, it comes on top of it. So it's not that the other things become invalid or they're just thrown out of the window. They come on top of it. So a lot of persons, not only who in their narratives, but also for my own experience, found parenting the most, or for example, in case of women who gave birth, motherhood as the most challenging time in terms of this intersectional disadvantage. And a lot of them, so keeping in mind that love migrants are migrating for family reasons or love reasons, they are not coming with, like myself, with a big plan of, okay, now I have a career and then I can have a family and then I can go ahead with career again. So a lot of times in this process, they've come to this new country. They have not arrived. They somehow have arrived, and then they are facing these challenges, which are based on perhaps their gender, but also their migrant status. And then in the middle of all that, they also get a baby. And then they see their role as a mother or as a parent as also very highly important. However, there is an interaction of these things. So, for example, if we talk about prestige languages, so there's the whole thing with languages. In Germany, Turkish migrants form a majority of migrant community. And I had in the interview two women who spoke Turkish to their children, and they, alongside the challenges of bringing this language to the child when they are living in a German dominated setting, was that they experienced this xenophobia or racism, or being told by random people, why are you talking Turkish to them? They're living in Germany, you should be talking German. And this is what an intersectionality would be, because first of all, you are left wondering, okay, why the hell are you telling me, random person, that I should be talking another language to my child? But where is that coming from? At the same time, if we had a French family speaking French to their
Me.
child,
You can talk about me in the US talking German to my daughter, and people are like, "Oh, what beautiful language is that? I'm wondering." And I say German. Oh, how interesting. Always praise, talking about prestige languages. It's like
exactly,
that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is, intersectionality. And then at the same time, if you see, so if this was a man talking to the child in, say, Turkish, would this person, this random person, have interrupted them? Probably not as well. So there also the gender dynamic plays a role. Then also with many other things. Also, for example, in my case, I often till today by German family members or extended or random people get told, warum redet ihr kein Deutsch zu Hause? Why don't you talk German at home? And then you are like, excuse me, first of all, none of your business. And secondly, well, we are a multilingual family, and I also have an identity. I also have a language and a culture that needs to be imparted to my family. I think that is one of the bigger challenges when you have parenthood intersecting with the various other dimensions of your being. I also had really interesting person say to me, I'm a mother, I'm a migrant, and I'm a woman. How do you think I'm going to proceed? Like, it's close to impossible for me to succeed. This was in a focus group discussion. And then on top of that, that person also had a visual religious belonging. So uh, the person had faced so much disadvantage because of who they were that it also was, yeah, it was turned into, this feeling of exclusion all the time, and all the time being so obvious out there. And I think this is what the intersectional disadvantage also does to one person. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And I just feel we can go on and on. So Nadia is here. If you missed Nadia's the conversation room with Nadia, you have to just Google YouTube and the conversation room, and you'll find the very insightful conversation with Nadia. And Nadia commented, "German living in Canada here. I agree with what Ellen just said. No one ever told me here to not speak German to my kids." Right. And then there's another comment. In Germany, there is this belief that there are prestige languages, for example, French, English, or Spanish. And in addition to that, people do not mind their effing business. They always have to share their opinion. Yes, exactly. And then there's another LinkedIn user. Unfortunately, I do not see the person's identity. Turkish German living in Canada, Quebec specifically. And for everybody who does not know, in Quebec, the language, the main language is French that is used there. Language is exceedingly difficult to navigate here. Yeah, especially in that context. So thank you so much for these comments. And Samia, another term that we were talking about is sisterhood or a sisterhood initiative. And we talked about, oh, it's Merve. Hi, Merve. It's so good that you're joining. So the last comment was from Merve, and a very dear person that I'm going to refer to in just a second. But talking about sisterhood, empowerment, what does that term mean to you, and why are you using it, or why is it important for you?
The term sisterhood just came to me as an idea after actually reading one of your books, Was uns empowert.
And you know what? Merve is also in that book.
Oh,
So for
cool.
everyone who doesn't know this book, it is a book that was published last year with three other Flinter of color, in this case, women of color. And we had the vision of where is this book where we are represented with our stories, very similar to your Love Migrant initiative. And here are stories that you can read mainly in the German language from the perspectives of people who are experiencing racism and
Yeah.
other intersections as well.
Exactly. And for me, it was always since the PhD, it was actually one of the biggest implications. I also mentioned in my PhD that I would imagine as one output of my PhD to actually have a concept of empowerment hubs, like, a place or space where you just go and you can be yourself and but at the same time you can gain from it, as I talked earlier as well, in context of grassroots activism, that you connect with people, but you can also gain soft skills, you can gain contacts, you can gain laughter, you can gain love, whatever it is that you're seeking. And um, particularly, I'm just going to read thanks, Ellen. uh, I can't hear you, you are muted.
Yes, and that's a classic. I just said I don't have emojis here in this tool, so I'm just going to use this. A lot of love for your empowerment house idea.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to read one aspect from it, if I can ever find the page. There it is. And I will give you a short. Do we have enough time for that?
Yes, we have.
Okay. So the chapter is called Sisterhood, Mask of Queen, and it's written by Ruta McOnnen. And in the beginning, the person writes, ein lautes Lachen ist zu hören, dann zwei, drei, vier, fünf, sechs, sieben, acht, neun, zehn und schlussendlich 11 Frauen, die gemeinsam lachen. Aus dem Lachen heraus entsteht Freude. Diese Freude breitet sich aus und expandiert im Raum. Dieser Geräusch ist wie Musik, selbst komponierte Musik, die keinem Genre zuordnen ist, außer dem Genre Good Mood, wenn es dieses überhaupt gibt. Genau, diese Szene fehlt mir als erstes ein, wenn ich an Sisterhood denke. Was wir Menschen alle gemeinsam haben, ist der Wunsch, gesehen und gehört zu werden und dafür Wertschätzung zu erfahren. And I think this is basically my motivation. A place, a space, an initiative where we get heard, where we get appreciated for who we are and how we walk in. Um, and a place where she later on also writes about where the shoulders can fall down and where you can have a good laugh. And exactly, and this was something one of my dear friends, but at that time an interview partner, also said, a place where you can just abtauchen, like a place where you are just not obvious anymore. Whether it's because of your language or others, intersectional disadvantages that are talked about. And this is what the idea behind sisterhood is. And if I think of it, if my dream turns into reality, I look at it in the practical sense, literally a place where we can have workshops and seminars about, say, how to write a job application, how do I do an interview in German, etc. But at the same time, we offer a room where we can have a cooking evening together and we laugh and we watch a movie together, or we share our anxieties about, for example, my almost teenage son, and I don't know what to do, and these kind of things, and where you do not feel judged, where you do not get told, warum spricht ihr kein Deutsch zu Hause? Um, or where you don't get any kind of lens put on you, or any kind of judgments. I think, and that's really my intention, my hope, and my dream.
Yeah. And while you were reading it, the lines from the book, and thank you so much for doing this, it really brought tears to my eyes, because now I just get a glimpse of the impact of such initiatives like a book project.
Yeah.
And probably for you, it's the same. You might be in a room empowering women in your case, and they will carry that to the place where they live, to their day-to-day life, and they will take little bits of it, empowering pieces, maybe one strategy, maybe a joke, maybe one thing that they can do with their kids, or whatever it is, or one thing that brings joy to their life. And I think oftentimes we have so much more impact than we can imagine. So applause to you. in the US, you would say kudos.
Ah,
So, like giving you a cookie for an acknowledgement of your work. I think it is so important. And one thing that came up in my mind is the Swans initiative. Have you heard about it? And if
no.
not, I'm going to share it with you. This is an initiative and that can intersect with the work that you do, because this is especially for migrant people, and I'm not sure, but probably migrant women who get supported with the process of getting a job. So support for CVs and all these kind of things. And there's another comment by Natya saying it is good to be surrounded by people who get you and accept you the way you are. I love what you do. So you see, that is a somebody live from the audience seeing what you do. And I guess when people are watching the recording and the ones who are not live commenting here will also, yeah, be able to connect and yeah, just relate to what you do. So unfortunately, already coming to this end. And before that, I have to say that is the book I published last year. And of course, I'm a person of many projects and ideas. I'm doing another book project in German language, which is around intersectional family perspectives. So there are many dark-skinned folks, folks of color, people with disability and chronic illnesses, trans people, non-binary people, um, people with autism, ADHD. So like all the perspectives that you normally do not read or hear out there. So I'm also never getting tired of my activism or the way that I try to bring representation to the world. And for your future, um, looking ahead, what are your hopes and aspirations? And maybe you can also do a call to action if you need someone or initiative, sponsor, funding, whatever it is, to the people out there who are listening now that can come back to you. But what are your hopes for the future?
Uh, as I already mentioned, my hope is to make my dream a reality. I have been wishing this for so long, not in competition with the Verband that I'm a member of and with whom I'm very active because they do a wonderful job. But I want to make it women specific, and I want to make an initiative that is literally speaking from my heart the way my PhD did. So basically, I want to convert my PhD into action. Um, because one thing is about sharing the story, and the other is to offer that space and to have action. And so, my plea would be to anyone listening out there who has any experience with founding initiatives in Germany, because that's another tricky business. Perhaps Ellen, you as my mentor. I'm really looking for support of any form, advice of any form, connections, particularly people working in this space. But I'm also looking for a friendly space. Like I also want to, as you said as well, I'm looking for a space where I feel safe. So if you're intending to cooperate with me, don't expect me to be a CEO material. I will take my time. I will have my dinner with my kids, and I will not respond to your emails. So that's, you know, I want to still enjoy my life. But at the same time, I want to have an initiative that gives me so much joy that I am there and I'm doing the work because it's so much joy for me. And I think this was exactly how I did my PhD as well. I never saw it as work. And I think this is what I'm hoping, is that to form something that is in a flow and it comes from a right place, and that's how the motivation and the support is enriching for others. So please connect with me, give me your tips and tricks. um, my German is not perfect, so please don't contact me in German. Of course. You can contact me in German. I will respond in English. And apart from that, please feel free to send me questions or catch ups for coffees if you are living close by somewhere, or even online coffee rounds. I will be more than happy to talk more about Love Migrants and my initiative.
Hmm, that was so nice. And why like this? I would have loved to talk longer with you. I had so many questions, but since we're parents, my kid is calling, or my kids. So let's wrap it up at this point. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ilias, in the background for your support. Thank you to my team. Thank you, everyone, for joining and listening to our conversation today. If you liked it, please recommend us, share, like, and comment on LinkedIn. And you can also use the link on YouTube and send the recording to all the people that need to hear more about that. So this is it for now. And I will say goodbye and see you the next time. The next time will be pretty soon in June when we are talking about beyond diversity washing with Daniela Schubert. Take good care, everyone. Bye.